Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast for the Central Oregon Flower Collective, which we are now calling Farming Flowers. So I'm so excited to welcome another one of our farmers in the collective. This is Emily from Covey Fields, and we're just going to have a conversation today about how she got started and how she kind of manages her flower farming side hustle. And then we'll kind of dive into some of the nitty gritty in how she runs her business. So welcome, Emily.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and chat all things flowers as a side hustle.
Yay. Well, we've got a little picture up on the screen now of you as a darling little flower girl. So let's kind of just start at the beginning and maybe let's talk about your farm name, which is Covey Fields. Tell us a little bit about how you came up with that and what it means to you, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Sure, sounds good. Yeah, so my farm name is Covey Fields. I think anytime you're gonna like name your business, it's kind of a big deal. There's a lot of stress about it, or maybe that was just me, but I really toiled over what I was gonna name my business. And for me, I wanted it to feel something that was like very authentic to me and the place where I'm farming. Um, and if you didn't know, which I think you do, that a group of quail is called a covey. So we have a lot of quail in Central Oregon, and particularly where I live, you are always seeing quail kind of run across the road together and through the fields around my house. And one thing about quail that I really resonated with was the fact that they run as a group. So a covey of quail is a group of quail, and they're a very like community oriented bird. So they stick together, they look out for each other. So I really love that like metaphor I found in it, like a community. So that is something that I feel like is really central to like my business ethos. And so once I landed on that, I just felt like it was very me and it very much matched where I'm farming. Um, and I think it also kind of connects to like the bigger goal of being really kind to Mother Earth and the interconnectedness that flower farming, any kind of farming or anything you're doing really that is using the earth has. So that's really important to me as well. It it's kind of like in retrospect, thinking about it, like it's not a familiar word, covey, to a lot of people. So maybe should have done a little market research on bird terminology, but it is a conversation starter. So I think that aspect of it is probably good from a marketing perspective. But I don't regret it because I still really love the name. But like the amount of people that don't know covey or how to pronounce it is kind of high. So you live and learn.
Yeah, I think that's great. That is a conversation starter because if someone sees your logo somewhere, which is a darling little logo with the quail in it, I mean that's a great way to kick off a conversation. So I love that. Well, okay, so let's talk a little bit about how you got started growing flowers to begin with. Did you come from a background of gardeners? Did you grow up in a big, beautiful flower garden? I mean, a lot of people have, moms or grandmoms or aunts or whoever that, grew sweet peas or, everyone seems to have a story about
Hmm.
growing up in a garden. So what was your early beginnings in the gardening world?
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of those memories as well. So you see little Emily Flower Girl there. Um, Earliest memories were two of my aunts had gardens. One aunt I did a lot of like veggie gardening, and I remember like very core memory of like the experience of like harvesting a carrot and like hearing that popping sound coming out of the ground
Yeah.
and just like she would babysit me a lot through the summers while my parents were working. And so the fact like we got to kind of do that whole process from like seed to harvest, that's pretty magical as a kid. And then my
Mhm.
aunt, I was really lucky that my aunt and uncle and cousins lived right next door to me growing up. And she had a huge garden. And I remember she was really more into flowers. And so she had a lot of zinnias and delphinium. Her favorite was blue morning glories, and so that was always really magical to spend time with her.
Oh,
And so it really
nice.
has always been like a place of refuge and discovery and yeah, a really important place, I think, for me. And then what really kind of kicked it over the edge as far as just like farming, gardening, sustainable, everything was in seventh grade. My English teacher, who, I had bonded with, she said, "Hey, what are you doing this summer?" And I was like, I don't know. I'm a seventh grader. What am I going to do? She's like, "Well, me and my friend, we're going to start this garden school." And I was like, "A garden school? Like, I don't even know what that is." But it just so happened to be at this church, like dirt lot really close to my house. And so I just said, I said yes. I really like this teacher. And that just kind of set in motion this whole lifetime of, of garden love. And I ended up staying with the program all the way till I graduated high school. So I was one of the founding youth board members, I
Wow.
think. I had all sorts of roles. And I got to
Hmm.
see these two powerhouse women who had this vision to teach youth about the natural world, take an abandoned church like dirt lot and turn it into this thriving community center. And it really paved the way of like my professional career, and just also how much the garden farming is central to my life. So I included a picture in there too of me. I wrote a grant, like I wrote my first grant when I was in high school to build a produce stand. So we had like a little market stand and stuff. So um, that's called Boise Urban Garden School. Shout out to Wendy and Amy. Um, they were very pivotal mentors in me kind of having this course in my life.
Well, that's fabulous. Is that still in existence? Are they still
Yeah,
functioning?
it's
And
huge now. It's actually like part of the city of Boise, like programming. So it got kind of absorbed into like the Parks and Rec department there. They moved to like a much bigger site. They have all sorts of programming. It's pretty cool to see it now, like 20 years later, more than
wow,
that.
that's amazing. We should put the contact info. I can put that in the show notes if anybody wants to go check that out, if they have a web presence or Instagram page or
Yeah,
something.
for sure.
Okay, so it sounds like you've got a long line of gardening in your blood. So then maybe let's talk about how you and when you made the decision to take it from, what they jokingly say a hobby, which it's never just a hobby. It's for a true gardener, I think it's just a part of your life, of who you are. It's not a
Hmm.
hobby necessarily, but how did you go from that into making it a business? What made you decide to take that leap?
Yeah, so I've kept a little garden everywhere I've lived, and my husband and I lived in Bend for about 12 years in the same house, and we had a little corner lot house, but a really small yard. But we packed as much as we could into it,
Yeah.
and we both have a lot of hobbies that exceeded the size of the yard and the garage. So we knew it was time to find something else, and so in we sold our house in 2022, and then we ended up finding this place in we moved in early or May 2023. So, we were like, screw the house. We're going to start
Yeah.
planting in the garden because we're like,
Yeah.
we got a short window of opportunity here.
Right.
So, luckily, the people that lived here before, they had some infrastructure. So, we had some garden beds to work with. And so that summer, I planted a ton of flowers, like, a ton of veggies, but also a ton of flowers, more than I had ever planted before. Not really with, at that point, it wasn't like this, I'm going to have this business. But by the end of the summer, I was like, oh, I have a lot more flowers than I can really give away. I would give them to neighbors and friends. And I think I was just at this cute little vintage market, and these two ladies, and I feel like the common thread of a lot of what we talk about is like how awesome women are. Um,
Yeah.
these two ladies that run this vintage shop, I was just telling them, like, yeah, I'm growing all these flowers. Like, I think I kind of want to start selling them. And they're like, well, you could sell them here. And I was like, really? And, that just opened this door of like, all right, I have an opportunity to sell my flowers. And so I wrapped up some bouquets and I brought them for the weekend that they did the sale. And it went over really well. And it was just the nudge I needed to be like, all right, like, let's start thinking a little bit more strategically about this. I think I already had my business Instagram because I didn't want to like flood my personal page with just like gardening content. So I was like, I had made the decision, like, I am going to start kind of putting more of that out there, but I hadn't really done any of the sales. Um, And I think there's just something about when somebody says, well, like, I believe in you, like, come share
Yeah.
these. Like, it was super nerve-wracking, but I was like, it was also low pressure and like in this really awesome environment of like this vintage market. I was like, okay, this is a really good way to just kind of test this out and see if I like it. And like I said, it went over really well. And that was in September. And so it was kind of the end of the season, but it was just enough to get my wheels turning and say, all right, this winter I'm going to plan and make this thing like more of a legit business.
Did you already, at that point, did you already have your business name and had you set yourself up as a business, or were you doing it sort of just to try things out and didn't really have all of the infrastructure yet for your business when you were doing those
Yeah,
first
I
markets?
just had the name and I made the logo. So I feel like a lot of, my background with a lot of gardening and farming was like that part. Like I always felt like I can grow things. I figured that out. But the business, and we'll talk more about that, like that was my big learning curve. And so there's been a lot of like fake it till you make it with that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I had my business name, I had my logo, maybe I had started a website, but I didn't have like the LLC. I didn't have the business bank account. I hadn't started like tracking expenses. I formed that in January of 2024. So
Okay.
that's when I was more focused on doing it as a business.
Okay. So then in those early months, then, um, what were some of the challenges that you faced in shifting from hobby to a business? Did you encounter
Yeah.
anything that was kind of hard to get over that initial hump of forming a business? Because I mean, during all this time, you're still working a full-time job as well, right? You were still
Hmm.
9 to 5ing
Yeah.
and
Yeah. So, yeah, I do have a full-time job. I guess that's the whole premise of this series of podcasts is it's as a side hustle. So I work in the social work field, and so the garden and all of that has always been very much therapeutic to me. So yeah, I work 9 to 5, and that part, I was able to squeeze things in here and there, especially like in the off season of doing research. But like I said, the learning the business side of things was a huge learning curve and really intimidating to me. Um, I think, there's so many little things that go into it, like opening a business bank account and having all the right documents when you show up and answering all the questions that, they're asking you specific things about your license or what type of business you are, how you're going to do your taxes. And those were really uncharted territory, or that was really uncharted territory for me. Also, working with people as customers was a really new concept to me, and developing
mm,
relationships from that point of view, developing a brand. Like, how do I want to present myself? What do I want to put out there? Then getting into, I'm not just growing things because I love them anymore. There's still a lot of that, but growing things that are more profitable and more strategic for what our area kind of can support and what
yeah.
florists want. Using social media in a totally different way. Um, and I don't know what it was about this because I've honestly had business ideas before and I've always kind of wanted to do it, but I never really gave myself the permission or the confidence to really go for it. And something about this, it might have been that first sale, it might have been like that I knew how to grow flowers, but I just gave myself permission for that first year. So summer 2024. So I'm still a very baby flower farmer. Summer 2024 was my summer to try everything, throw spaghetti at the wall and to see what sticks, and not to try to be perfect, which I know is really hard for some of us. We want to be perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to show this picture. For those of you that live well, I can't even say now just in the West because wildfires are actually all over the country now. But I wanted to show this picture of your beautiful dahlias with the ash all over them. And
Hmm.
maybe you can kind of talk about
Bad week.
last summer when we were all pretty much devastated by endless ash. that fell from the sky
Hmm.
on all of our beautiful flowers.
Yeah, there are so many things that are out of your control when you're farming.
Yeah.
Um, so this, yeah, I think it was a July, August.
I, yeah.
It was a really, really hot summer, and so I remember already just watching the dahlias, which are one of my favorite flowers, just limping along and being probably a foot shorter than they would be in previous summers because it was just so hot. They just got stunted behind. And then we finally got to the point where I was getting a lot of blooms, and the ash blew in one day and
Yeah.
it just tarnished so many of these like beautiful blush colored dahlias.
Yeah.
And I just stood in the field and was just, I don't know if I cried, but I was just appalled that that had happened. I was like, I cannot believe that I just have to cut these and get rid of them and wait, another week or two for more flowers. And we the great thing about having a collective of flower farmers here is that we do commiserate with each other, and a lot of us were in the same boat, but um, there's just those things that are out of your control, and that was definitely one of them, the environment.
Yeah. Well, and I think some people are probably going to say, well, why didn't you just wipe the ash off of the flowers? And
Well, I
unfortunately,
tried.
especially on these light colored ones, the ash, they were actually like little tiny micro embers, and they sort of just burned holes in all of these beautiful petals. And if you tried to wipe the ash off, it just kind of did a smear, and yeah, they just were
Yeah, a lot of
ruined.
people are like, just wipe it off or get some canned air and blow it on.
Yeah.
I tried. I tried everything. Believe me, I was
Yeah.
willing to sit there with a Q-tip and isopropyl alcohol and clean every dahlia if it meant that I could save them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
nope, I just had to accept it and let it go.
Yeah. It can be brutal for sure. Uh, well, okay, so let's maybe talk a little bit about you did mention you're doing your 9 to 5 job still, and that's something that I sort of wanted this series to kind of help address for some people that maybe are working a 9 to 5 and are thinking about going into flower farming as a side hustle. Can you maybe talk about how you have figured out how to balance both of these things? Like, I mean, especially in the summer when it's hot and you get home and you've got to get out and you've got to harvest and you've got to do things. Have you found any tricks, or have you found a rhythm that you've gotten into to kind of help balance where you're not hitting burnout in both places?
Hmm. Yeah, so I am super duper lucky that predominantly I work from home. So, and
Oh,
my flower
awesome.
farm is in my backyard. So I can squeeze a lot in the early morning on my lunch break. And then as soon as it's 5 o'clock, I'm in my overalls and I'm back outside. So
Yeah.
that I don't take for granted because I know that really allows me to do a lot of that like little monitoring and stuff that is really beneficial um,
Hmm.
for a farm because a day can, especially like tulip season, for example, like if you've got tulips that are opening, you want to be there to harvest
Yeah.
them throughout the day.
Right.
So that part I do feel pretty fortunate. I'm also pretty intentional about the scale that I'm at. So we live
Mm.
on 5 acres, but I'm probably farming 1,000 square feet. Like at this point, that's what's manageable for me, and that's what I'm kind of trying to keep the balance with. I also I think that before you go really big, you need to make sure your key infrastructure is really dialed in. And we still have some
Yeah.
big things around, like a watering system that's more permanent, permanent fencing, that kind of thing that ends up saving you a lot of time. So
Yeah.
that's something that I think about. And kind of on that same note, thinking about efficiency, like, we have drip
Hmm.
tape irrigation set on a timer. I'm not out there hand watering.
Yeah.
Some other early investment I made was in really good soil and amendments. And I feel like this is probably a whole nother podcast, but soil health, like if
Yeah.
you
Oh,
set up your
yeah.
soil health to be good, then you're not going to be chasing pests. You're not going to be out there with the sluggo every other day.
Yeah.
So I think there are some strategic decisions you can make that make things more efficient, that helps keep that balance. And again, since this is a side hustle, like I can kind of throttle it to the point where like if I want to go super hard and have a sale every weekend, I could, but if I also need to pull back and like find that balance again and go somewhere for the weekend, I can. Um, I am very cognizant of not doing this to the detriment of my day job or my personal life.
Yeah.
Last year I found that balance, and so that's why I was like, I could totally expand in many directions on my property, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to make sure that I have a lot of the systems dialed in before I get any bigger.
Do you have plans to eventually become a full-time flower farmer?
Um, right now, no. I think that because this did start like such from a place of passion and enjoyment and
Mhm.
fulfillment, I kind of want to keep it in that lane.
Yeah.
And especially while I'm still learning the business, like I said, this will be my second official summer. Um,
Yeah.
I'm not quite ready to take that leap, uh, but it's pretty cool to be able to do it even in the capacity that I'm doing it. And 1,000 square feet, like I think a lot of people, maybe when they listen to Lindsay's, they could have been inspired because she does this in her
Mhm.
backyard. Like you can
Yeah.
grow a lot of flowers in a small space.
Yeah.
Again, if you're just a little bit strategic. So I think that that's that's maybe something that people like. I still have a hard time calling myself a farmer because it's such a small space. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm just a little farmer because to me, a farmer is a much bigger scale operation, but
Yeah.
you can grow a lot in a small space. So I think that, if somebody was thinking about doing it and they have a full-time job, just, start that first season a little bit smaller than maybe you think you should go for because every
Yeah.
decision you make, it has this like exponential timeline, right? If
Yeah.
you expand your growing area, that's that much more area you have to water, weed,
Right.
fertilize, harvest, all of that. So I think early on it makes a lot of sense if you can keep it a more manageable size.
Yeah. That's good advice. Okay, so I think I want to let's talk a little bit. Let's go into sort of the business side of things. And I've got kind of a few directions I think maybe we can go. So one of them is as we're kind of talking about you starting out, like initial startup costs. Did you sort of just buy whatever you thought you needed at the beginning? Did you start with a budget? How did you know how much you wanted to invest in getting this going as a business? Did you have any sort of steps that you took along the way to
Hmm.
kind of jumpstart you
Yeah, so
into?
yeah, one thing I did once I decided like that first summer or the first summer that I sold and then going into the next fall and winter when I was planning is I knew I needed to have like a little bit of a nest egg to buy some of those inputs because it was going to be at a scale that was beyond what I had ever done before. So I did start setting aside a few $100 into a business startup account after that summer. So then I could buy those inputs the next spring. So I did try to set myself up with that, but I did try to keep my initial costs pretty low. You don't need everything all at once, and you
Hmm.
don't need the fanciest things. Um, the things that I prioritized, like I said, were high quality soil and amendments to start, the drip irrigation, which is Drip Depot is great. You can run a
Yeah.
system together pretty fast. So that
Right.
really wasn't a huge one. Fencing, we live somewhere that has a lot of deer and rabbits, so
Yeah.
fencing was a big one. But even those kind of lower costs, and then once I started getting into bouquet making and all the marketing stuff, if you have a website, you're paying a monthly fee. Canva is a fee. All those little things do really
Hmm.
add up. You don't need all those things. Like some of those things were more wants for me. Um, but but yeah, I try to keep it pretty low, but I feel like I still spent, I don't know. I think if I look at my thing, I probably spent like 8 to 10 grand that first summer just buying all that input and stuff. Some of
Hmm.
that I won't have to buy again, but some of it, I do have to replenish every year. So it was a bit of a risk to do that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm really glad that I was able to almost break even last year, but it was still, more than I'd ever spent on something that I wasn't sure I was gonna,
Hmm.
get back. But at the end of the day, I was growing a ton of flowers, which brought me
Yeah.
a lot of joy. So if that was the worst thing to happen, then
Yeah,
that was it.
exactly.
Um, one thing that I did want to note was like if if you're like buying things, like there's certain things that you can totally get away with going on Facebook Marketplace and hodgepodging together. And this might just be my type A tendency, but some things that if you're just going to have to replace them in a year, it's probably better to just cough up the money and buy the right thing now. Like my example
Yeah.
is my seed racks. They're a really specific dimension and they perfectly fit the super sprouter. So I know I can fit 16 trays on them. They're a little deeper than the average one, and the lights that I buy just fit them perfectly. And I don't have a huge space. I use like half of our garage as my studio and my seed starting area. So for me, efficiency in space and how I'm using um, my equipment is really important. And so for that, I'm going to pay full price and just get the right thing
Yeah.
because I'm never going to have to replace that. So
Yeah.
thinking about those decisions like that, I think is helpful too.
Yeah, I think that's a good tip there, is to really just sort of prioritize the things that are a long-term investment. Sure, you can go for those up front. I think each person probably has to just decide you know, what is really going to be their priority. If you are going to be starting a lot of seeds, maybe having a really good seed setup, maybe that could be where you spend your money, and maybe you just slowly work on your outside fencing. I mean, you can do temporary fencing fairly inexpensively, or, your soils, you can maybe slowly, make your own compost and get manure from places. And so I think
Hmm.
probably it does just depend on what your priority is. Um, okay, so then let's kind of shift into a little bit of, like, I wanted to show your picture here of your oils that you're making. So let's talk about maybe your
Hmm.
different sales channels, and how did you to decide to start making your oils, and maybe what are the sales channels that you came up with to sell your flowers, and maybe which ones have been the most effective for you. I know that's a whole lot of questions, but it kind of,
Yeah.
you can
I have a
just kind
lot to
of,
say about this because I feel like it is something you totally have to figure out on your own, but there is, and especially in the flower farming space, I feel like so many flower farmers have been generous with their knowledge. You're on YouTube, you can find a how-to on just about everything.
hmm, yep,
But the business side, especially for somebody who has the skills of growing things, they might be like me where they don't really know. It's like, how do I sell this stuff? So
yeah,
I
yeah,
did try a little bit of everything last year, and I reflected a little on each of those. So I'll talk about my different sales channels. I do have a CSA-esque type of subscription, so I call it the Petal Punch Card, and that's basically where people can pre-buy bouquets and cash them in throughout the season. So they can buy 4 or 6 bouquets, and you can come to my pop-ups, or I offer delivery on days. And people are like, "Is that manageable?" But I live a little bit out of town, like out of Bend, out of like the city proper. So I just let people know when I'm going to be in town grocery shopping or doing some kind of errand, and I can drop a bouquet off. So I try to work it into other aspects of my life to make it a little bit more manageable. So I have that going. I've done pop-ups, I've done retail, and I've done wholesale. So those are kind of some of the main ones that you can really do. And I love the pedal punch card because to me, those are like my biggest supporters. They're the people that I feel like really
yeah,
see what I'm doing. But like they believe in me to the point where they're gonna like pre-buy the flowers that aren't even growing yet. Like those
yeah,
are my people. I love them and I have really wonderful connections with them. Um, like I said, I do delivery or they can come to my pop-ups and I give them first dibs if I have flowers and I'll throw in like extra goodies when I have them because I grow other things too that I don't really sell. But like if I have fresh raspberries or something, like those
yeah,
are going to those folks. Um, and that is manageable at this point because, I have maybe 10 to 12 people that do that. But I think if that grew too much, the logistics might be a little hectic. Right now, it's
right,
still manageable. Pop-ups, I know this is controversial, but pop-ups have been pretty successful for me, and it's really just been totally credited to the location of where I do them. So I have a wonderful partnership with a friend who runs a bakery in Bend, and it's just kind of the perfect setting. People are there on a casual Saturday or Sunday with their families having
Yeah.
breakfast, and then they come outside and see a table of flowers. So that's been really wonderful. Those are a ton of work though. If I have that on a Sunday, all day Saturday, I'm harvesting, making bouquets,
Yeah.
pulling all my stuff together, charging my credit card reader. There's a lot that goes into those, and there's still not really a guarantee of sales. I've done pop-ups elsewhere that have been decent, but maybe not as worth it. So pop-ups do kind of run that risk. Um, and then wholesale, thanks to the collective,
Yeah.
I was able to sell through the collective channels to the florists. And beyond, selling your flowers, it's really friggin' cool to see these flower artists take the things that you
Hmm.
grew and
Right.
turn them into beautiful works of art, for a wedding
Yeah.
or for gifts for people. Like that really fills my cup. And we have a really amazing community of florists that see the value in local flowers, and they promote us and we promote them. And it's just really
Yeah.
awesome relationship we have. Challenge for me there is because I am smaller, I don't always have a huge quantity of the same bloom to offer, and that's really something that we need to do for our florists because they need a lot of the same color or the same
Yeah.
variety. So I might not always
Right.
have what they're needing. And there's a really big learning curve, which I feel like I figured it out more last summer. But in order to say, yeah, this is what I'm offering, you have to predict what you're going to have
Hmm.
in bloom and ready to harvest the following week. So that
Yeah.
that really is a challenge to learn your garden or your farm in a different
Mhm.
context. So that
Yeah.
was a big learning curve for me. And then retail, I've partnered with some other local markets, and that's really cool to have your products with other local items. So there's a
Hmm.
place in town called the Ranch Market, and they only carry local stuff. So I'll bring bouquets over there. But, logistics of getting 5 bouquets to a location
Yeah.
and variability week to week, like that definitely has a challenge as well. So I feel like they all have pros and cons, and I've had some success and some challenges with all of them.
Tell me about your oils here, the beautiful oil that we're looking at, because this is fairly new for you, isn't it? I don't, were you doing this last summer? Is that when you started this or?
Yeah, so I did this more like as a personal thing I did it a couple years ago for the first time. So really, what did they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. Uh,
Yeah.
and I have super dry skin, and Central Oregon is really dry. And so I was really just struggling with dry, cracking skin and was buying some really nice natural products. And then I started reading the label. I was spending a lot of money on those products. And I was reading
Hmm.
the label. I was like, I have calendula growing. I have chamomile growing. And this is very me to just be like, well, I could just make it myself. So
Right.
I did. And grew the calendula and the chamomile, dried them, infused them into oils, and gave them away as gifts a couple Christmases ago. And then people started coming back to me that, friends and family I'd given them to, and they're like, I'm out, I need more. And it's just a super moisturizing, healing little oil. And for me, again, it's pretty cool to say, I grew that seed. I tended the plant. I
Yeah.
harvested it. I dried it. It's a huge amount of work, but to be able to offer something like that is kind of a complementary product now
Yeah.
to the fresh flowers. And I've tried a few different things to think about. We have a pretty short window for fresh flowers here,
Yeah.
4-ish months, 4 or 5 months, depending on how you do it. Um, so especially as we're thinking about the potential of, yeah, if I did want to make this a full-time gig, I couldn't just rely on a summer income. So what could I do to really extend that out? And so I've
Mm.
tried some what I would call non-perishables, um, like the oils. I did, and I still really love that. I'll probably do that in the future, but that's a whole different marketing
Hmm.
strategy, and I haven't really figured it out yet. I have the people that love it, but there's so many skin products out there. It's kind of a sea of competition.
Yeah.
So I need to
Right.
think a little bit more about that. But at least for personal use and to keep my friend's skin
Yeah.
happy, I'm going to keep doing that. One thing I will say I tried that I didn't like was dried flower stuff. So Dry
Uh,
flowers are great because, you're not, if you see you're not going to sell something, you just dry it.
yeah,
And I was like,
right.
well, through the fall, I'll go out into my shop and I will make wreaths and I'll love it. And I think maybe the type A personality came out again. And I was like, this is so messy. It's cold out here.
Yeah.
Fall and winter markets are also cold. I didn't really
Hmm.
enjoy that. So that feels good to just be like, yep, not gonna do that next year. It wasn't the
Yeah.
juice was not worth the squeeze on that for me.
Yeah. I
Um,
feel you for
yeah.
sure. Those are tough.
Um,
Um, I want to show this picture too of because you also were doing some weddings. You did one last year. I think you've got one coming up this year. So that's a
yeah.
major step. So how did you get into doing weddings?
Yeah, I've done them kind of hobbyist as favors for friends and stuff over the years. And this year I'm really opening myself up to it more. Last year I did probably three or four in total. One was like fully solo, and it's a ton of work, but it's so fun. It's such a good
Hmm.
creative stretch. It's when we talk about revenue streams, full service events probably are one of the bigger ones. I think
Yeah.
florist, farmer florist is what we call it, can do. Uh, and for the bride that I'm working with this summer, it's pretty cool to be like, hey, look at this dahlia that I just got for your wedding, or I started the delphinium that we're going to have for your wedding.
Yeah.
And for somebody who cares about local and sustainable anything, like
Hmm.
there's no better way you can do it. So I'm really excited to be able to offer it. It's a ton of work. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that happens with that kind of stuff because you're communicating with
Yeah.
the planners or the brides and really dialing in the vision, making sure everything's on the same page. And then obviously the execution of a one day event like that is pretty significant. So I'm really excited for it. It's a huge honor, but it's also a ton of work. So I'll probably keep it, to a manageable level of events.
Yeah.
Helping out some of my friends that are florists as well as fun. So I'm going to be doing
Yeah.
that more this summer.
Okay. Now I want to show a picture of your beautiful bouquets. So let's kind of maybe talk about social media and sort of how that plays a part in your business growth. How are you finding customers? Do you find social media is a valuable tool in finding customers? Because I know, you can just get lost in the sea of all the Instagram posts. And do you find that there are
Hmm.
any channels that work better for you in finding customers? Or let's kind of just dive in a little bit to your experience with social media.
Yeah, I might start kind of just more about like how I find customers and then how that trickles in. But I do want to just say like how powerful relationship building has been for me in finding customers and building connections. So, I've got some new friends, some old friends, and have just naturally and organically been able to find a place to do a pop-up, done events, for folks. And it's just through conversation. So I think that, that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but just start talking to people about it. That is really where I was able to get a lot of early momentum. And flowers are a really easy thing to talk to people about. And
Yeah.
everybody has some kind of sense, memory, or connection to it. And so it's a pretty easy platform to jump off from and talk to people about. Uh, and being a good friend, being a good neighbor, being a good patron, like that's all the right thing to do. But it's also so full circle. Like people remember
Hmm.
you when then an opportunity comes
Right.
up, and so many things have come from that. And I just wanted to reflect a little bit about how much I admire people who do run their own small businesses of any kind, but especially like our local farmers. I'm totally in awe of them because it is such a hustle. There's so many hidden costs to things that I never even thought about, your website, credit card fees, all of this. Um,
Yeah.
so that has really, or having this business has totally intensified my passion of supporting local businesses and farms. And that all comes back around. These are, like I said, they're our neighbors. We should be paying them a premium. We should be looking out for them. And when you do that, then the opportunities also just kind of come back around. So I also think that your flowers are your best advertisement without even intending. Several times I was meeting a friend for coffee or dropping some flowers off somewhere, and somebody saw the flowers and they just stopped me and said, "Are those real? Where did you get those?" And I just can, kind of start talking about, "Oh no, I grew them. I have a small flower farm, da 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 da." And, that organic marketing of people just seeing things sometimes is just the easiest way to put yourself out there.
True.
And then kind of on the social media side of things, putting your voice and your image out there. It's not like my comfort zone, but I really forced myself to start doing that and building those connections, bringing people in, showing them the behind the scenes, the unglamorous stuff, especially because of my background in garden education. I only learned all this stuff because somebody taught it to me, and there's a lot of people that just didn't have that experience. And so
Right.
what's the worst it could do if I teach some people how to garden? Nothing bad. So I'm always trying to think of like, oh, this might be interesting to somebody. And the amount of times that I've heard somebody say, I planted something because you showed me that, or I pinched my basil plants and now they're super full because you showed me that. Like those little things that I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
people are listening and people are gleaning something. And I think I just have to tell myself, like, if that's all that I do through this business, like, that's pretty amazing too. So I think social media, it's an easy way to just pick up your phone and connect with people. Um, it's also pretty dreamy to show pictures of flowers, and not everybody has the opportunity or the space to grow things. And so sharing that and sharing the magic of the little critters that run around is really fun for me, and I enjoy kind of bringing people into that storytelling aspect of it.
Right.
Um, I do think social media, like, it's a blessing and a curse in so many ways, but you know, I don't aim to go viral because I sell perishable flowers in Central Oregon. Like, I want people from
Yeah.
here to be following me. And
Yeah.
I think so far, like, my following is very good quality. Like, they are people who are here. Um, and I'm building those connections and finding ways to kind of open up their eyes to maybe what they could do in their backyard too, which is really fun for me.
Yeah, I love all of you do so much education on your Instagram when you do so many reels and even just short little stories with a little tip on something, or you're giving a garden tour at a certain time of the season and what things should look like. And so if anybody just likes those little kind of tidbit tip kind of reels and stories, definitely follow her on Instagram, because there's always something new to learn, and she is really good at the behind the scenes too, which I think all of us sort of have
Thank
that
you.
voyeuristic kind of a, ooh, I just want to see what her farm looks like. So you're really
Yeah.
excellent at all that.
Oh,
So
thanks.
which of the social media channels do you find maybe number one, the most pleasure in participating in, and maybe number two, the most interaction? Are there any of them that you
Yeah.
definitely have more connection with people, or do you see a difference between any of them?
I only have Instagram, and that's mostly because
Oh,
Facebook kind of was like on the way out. I knew Instagram, I had Instagram, and I never
yeah.
downloaded TikTok or YouTube. I mean, I reference YouTube a lot, but I only really use Instagram. So that's my
Okay.
frame of reference, and I don't have any desire to learn anything else.
Yeah.
But
I
I will
know.
say, what we hear this a lot, like as I've gotten down the business rabbit hole, it's like don't be just reliant on social media because the algorithms can
Yeah.
change. It could go by the wayside. So I
Right.
am actively building my email distribution list, and I
Very
send
good.
newsletters and kind of try to infuse some of the same things, like this is what I'm doing this week at the farm, and check
Hmm.
out, Gary, which you'll have to see if you go to my Instagram soon. Gary will be coming out.
Yes. Scary.
Gary's the lizard. There are many Garys. Just fun little things like that, and inviting people in and showing them what I'm up to, and just building that connection. And I do really love to write too, and so the Instagram isn't really great for long format like that.
Yeah.
So I can utilize
Yeah.
my website blog and my newsletter for writing kind of more that storytelling aspect of the flower farm.
Yeah, I think that's important because, I mean, yes, everybody likes to see the beautiful pictures, but I think just as many people like to hear the story and, maybe see the behind the scenes and how you got where you are and why you chose what you
Hmm.
chose. And so, yeah, I think that's important. Okay, so I'm going to show a couple pictures here of your flower field. And then maybe as we kind of start to wrap up, I had just a couple of questions I wanted to ask you that are just kind of feel good kind of things. So, what is your
Okay.
favorite flower to grow? Do you have a favorite or a favorite
Mm.
variety? Is there anything that has stolen your heart?
I feel like it changes. Dahlias and peonies were definitely the first things that were like specialty that I got into. I started going to Edelman's peony farm, and it just
Mm,
like blew my mind that there were so many varieties of peonies. Um, and then dahlias are a whole rabbit hole. Again, probably
yeah,
another podcast episode
yeah,
that you can go down, and that's super fun and fulfilling. I'm able to do a little tuber sale on the side, and also sell the cut flowers for the dahlias. So I love that it has dual purpose. Delphinium, anything that sparkles is pretty cool. Like the sparkly
hmm,
delphinium, some dahlias kind of shimmer. That's really cool. Anything that, yeah, that you can include, like make medicine out of, like that's a whole nother
mm,
tangent of things you could be doing.
yeah,
The face oil and herbal healing is so cool. It's impossible to choose.
yeah. It's true. It really is. Do you have any major goals that you've set for the farm for this year? Is there anything you've got on your list of goals to accomplish?
Yes, I would say better succession planning and space
Mm,
utilization. So I packed things in, but I could have packed it in more last year. So I'm going to be packing things in more. Um, I did kind of lose steam, especially because it was so hot, and I think that ashy week just kind of it did depress me, and so I lost steam
hmm,
towards the end of last season. And my goal this season is just to go all the way through and make the most of every bloom, like find a home for every bloom, whether it's wholesale, retail. And I'm excited with the collective. We have so many outlets now, so I think it's
yeah,
going to be doable to get the flowers out there. Um, Definitely just getting more focused. Like I said, last summer was the summer to be imperfect, to throw spaghetti at the wall, figure out what I really love doing, what I didn't love doing. So I am growing more for our florists and growing bigger quantities of the preferred items that I saw that they really liked last year, and getting rid of the things that required a lot of deadheading or weren't really
yeah,
good producers. So I took a lot of notes last summer. Like I said, I'm increasing my wedding and event work, which I'm excited about. That's just a whole different creative side of my brain that I get to use. And I did accomplish one goal already. I got a cooler, which I've
yay,
shown on Instagram, but that's going to be a game
yeah,
changer. We've named her
absolutely.
Jennifer Cool Fridge. So if you know the actress Jennifer Coolidge, I did a group naming thing, and somebody came up with that, and it was perfect. So she's Jennifer Coolfridge. Right now she's full of bubbly water, but she will be full of tulips in a couple of
Yeah,
months. Hopefully
soon.
those are all popping up. So yeah. And then also just, keep that balance and remember why I'm doing this. So I think one of the coolest things about having this, and especially coming from a social work nonprofit background, is like being able to like give generously has been really amazing, and I've never really been in position to do that. So through the
Mm,
collective, we donate a ton of flowers. I've donated flowers elsewhere. I've donated gift certificates, and to be somebody that I feel like is really giving back to my community has been a really awesome feeling. So I want to do more of that, figure out how to make an impact, and just continue to share the knowledge I have, and try to encourage others to plant the seed, do whatever that thing is that they're trying to do. I want to be somebody that gets to be a cheerleader for them, because I think that the reason why I was successful this season really was credit to all the cheerleaders I had. It's just saying, oh, this is amazing, you can do this. And I
yeah,
just kept going and got to where I am. And one other thing that I really wanted to share, because, and this is more of my like woo woo life coach side of things, not super practical, but comparison is the thief of joy is a quote that comes to my mind a lot when I'm thinking about things. And
yeah.
I almost didn't jump into the flower farming thing here because I saw that there were already flower farmers. I'm like, oh, there's already flower farmers here. Like there wouldn't really be a place for me. Like what could I do that's like unique or different? Um, and I'm so glad I didn't listen to that because even if all of us grew as many flowers as we could, we probably still
Yeah. Yeah.
couldn't even fill the need of the florist here. And you can find your own voice. You can find your niche. You'll have a style or something that is different than others that makes you stand out. So I think for anybody that might have that inner critic of holding them back is just to like just put your toe in and see where it goes, because the only way that you can know if it's truly going to work or not is if you try it. And all
Mhm.
the whether you're coming like me where you have the growing experience but not the business experience, you can figure that out. If you've never grown before, you can figure that out. It's all figure outable. And
Yeah.
there's so many resources out there, and people like flower farmers are
Yeah.
amazing, and we have each other's back. And that's been
Yeah.
an amazing aspect of just gaining these really amazing friendships out of it. And when something goes wrong for somebody, we show up for each other. So
Yeah.
that's been really great. And credit to you, Lisa, for really cultivating such an amazing community of us here.
It's the best part of it. It's really, when I started the collective a few years ago, that was really what I was looking for, was building a community. And that's our tagline: community over competition. And
Yes,
it is really
yes.
amazing. We have 20 women farmers that we really do all show up for each other. And that's the best stuff. I mean, yeah, the flowers are great and selling flowers is great, but having that community is just the best. So highly recommend a
Mhm.
collective if anybody out there is thinking about growing. And if you don't want to be on your own and figuring this out by yourself, find a collective in your area or start one if there's not one already there. So, well, that's a really good way to wrap this up, because I was going to ask you if you had any advice for people that were maybe thinking about jumping off into doing this as a side hustle. Maybe they're just not so sure. And those are really good words of wisdom. And you're right. I mean, I think until you try something, you just don't know. And which I think most of
Mhm.
us do that the first few years, at least, is you grow all the things, and then it helps you figure out what grows well in your microclimate and the things that you enjoy growing. And so I think
Mhm.
you have to just try. So
Yeah. Yeah, you can read all the blogs and watch all the
yeah.
YouTube videos, but until you do it yourself, you don't really know. And
Yeah.
then yeah, and every year you just get a little bit better. So I'm super excited to take what I learned last year um, and go for it this next season.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I mean, the worst thing that can happen is you get a big giant vase of flowers you can put on your table or to share with your neighbor. So, you know,
Yeah, I think it's a pretty low risk endeavor
yeah.
overall.
Yeah. I mean, seeds are cheap, find a little patch in your backyard and throw out some seed and
Mhm.
see what kind of magic you can grow. So,
For sure.
well, Emily, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you? We'll have your contact information in the show notes, but tell us, do you have a website? You said you were on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Yeah, so my website is coveyfields.com, and my Instagram is coveyfields. So you can
Okay.
find me there, follow along the growing season as we start ramping up. There'll be a lot of behind the scenes seed starting stuff. I'll be selling some dahlias locally here in Central Oregon, and or dahlia tubers and dahlia cuttings. And just excited for all the tulips and ranunculus. Those will be my first things
Hmm.
out of the gate. So yeah, come follow me, and I'll teach you what I know. And I'm still learning a lot, but happy to share the knowledge that I have.
Well, you're a great teacher. So everybody go
Thanks.
follow her on Instagram. Well, thank you so much, Emily. And we will end it here. And I will say we're hopefully going to have another episode in this series next weekend. But if we don't, then we're going to shift into sort of some crop planning. And I have an agronomist who's going to be doing a soil episode. So it's good that you mentioned that.
Ooh,
Emily, we're going to
yes.
be talking
Soil
all
health
things
is
soil.
wealth.
Yes, it
That's
is
awesome.
indeed. Yes. So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. And we hope that you will follow us here. We are on Spotify now. If you just want to download the audio portion of this, but you really should watch the video, because then you get to see all the really pretty pictures. So, all right. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Lisa. Take care.